We have a very exciting session again for you today. We're going to start this session with Demetrio Migliorati, who is the Director of Innovation and the Head of Blockchain at Banca Mediolanum in Milan, who will be talking about the Spunta project. With no more ado, let me invite you to listen up and pay attention to Demetrio Migliorati, Director of Innovation and Head of Blockchain from Banca Mediolanum. Demetrio.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you to everybody too, and it's a pleasure to be here. Unfortunately, digitally, but we know that COVID is influencing our lives significantly. So I will spend 20-25 minutes to explain where we are in Italy from the perspective of a large project that we do with the financial institution. It is called Spunta. But before getting there, I'm going to share some slides. I hope everything is fine and you see it. I call it Italy is a blockchain country. Why? Because it is actually the only country right now which has all the banks connected and already working with the blockchain. We will learn in a while that it's not exactly a blockchain. It's a private permission and distributed ledger, but it's one of the main products that we call blockchain right now. So some contextualization in terms of volumes. We know that if we speak about blockchain, it's a very old story. It's almost 12 years ago that the mythical Satoshi Nakamoto produced the white paper that was the beginning of everything. But if we look at the hype cycle of Gartner for the financial services, we see that right now, Gartner says still that we need 5 to 10 years to go on the plateau of productivity. I'm slightly more optimist than Gartner, maybe because the perspective where I see what we are producing on the blockchain is the fact that we are very productive with projects and we are in production and so on. So I see already a productive way of using the blockchain in the financial industry. But we have to consider that even if the business value of this whole transformation in the blockchain schema is huge, is higher than what is normally considered the business value of moving value, exchanges value between peers. What we did right till now is basically having a technical viable blockchain. What we can say now is that yes, we have a platform and we can begin working productively with the platform and creating projects. Then we will have, as Gartner is highlighting, now 2 more phases. One is the big problem of the interoperability of blockchains. Because now we have, you will see, we have different infrastructure, different schema that we are using, but we need to combine them in order to have a vast adoption of this technique. So there will be basically 2 directions of development. One is in the direction of the operating viable permissioned blockchain, that is the one that normally we are using inside the financial institutions, and the technically scalable blockchain. I mean, the volumes that we are going to use if we transform some of the main digital components in payments, for instance, are absolutely enormous. So we need to have something really scalable. And most of the platform that we use right now have some limitation, still have some limitation. The final goal is to arrive in the 5 years between 23 and 28 with what we call the programmable permission blockchain, and that it will be real the platform in which most of the new projects related to exchanging values between peers will take place. At the moment, you will see the adoption of the blockchain is almost on the 50% of the companies. 48% still have no interest in using it. Most of them because they don't understand what is inside. Just 31% is planning to deploy it, so it's already studied and maybe tested with some POCs and so on. 10% is in the next 12 to 24 months, 7% in 12 months, and 4% has already deployed and using it productively. If I see the figures that normally every year the Polytechnic of Milan is explaining to us, there is a slight increase of the number of projects in production that we have over the different countries. Base year to year is a 56% of incremental rate, and it's quite significant. But what I want to highlight is how it's configured, because 90% of the new projects are on private blockchains. And those private blockchains actually are not blockchains, because a blockchain is a public distributed ledger. It's some kind of technology in which you have public distributed ledgers. But most of the projects that we are doing, particularly in finance and insurances, those are on private permission and distributed ledger, not decentralized, distributed. And even if they are really fully inspired by the technology of the blockchain, those are quite different, and they are more close to the needs of the financial industry and the insurance industry. Most of these new projects are based on new platforms, meaning that they are creating new infrastructures in which they are working with the blockchain. Only 35% is related to already existing platforms. Who is using it? Basically finance. Finance is still the largest industry using it. Government is arriving, agricultural, food, logistics, utility, insurance, and stuff. I think the insurances, and I will explain it later why, they have really huge possibility of use blockchain for the application. Most of them are doing payments or something very related to payments. I mean, it's about exchanging value between peers. But there is an interesting track that is relating to supply chain. I already think that there we will see there is a perfect use case for the blockchain infrastructure, and then we will see more projects arriving in that area. So coming to Italy, why Italy is a leading country? Of course, it's not comparable to what is done in USA in terms of number of projects, but only in terms of number of projects. Because if we look at the number of participants per single project, then everything's changed. Because in Italy, we have the Spunta project that is connecting all the banks together. And so we are close to up 200 participants and 200 million transactions per year. So if we look at the volumes and of this kind of projects, we can say that Italy is now already working on a large scale on a blockchain infrastructure. And it's not only related to financial institutions, but even in the insurance area, there are very good projects right now already carried on by large organizations and with the help of the regulator. And that is what really changed everything. I want to introduce you, I skip a couple of slides, a similarity that has been highlighted recently by an interesting research of Deutsche Bank. I always highlight the fact that we are living for blockchain the same situation that we were living at the end of the 90s with the web. If you remember that period, we began using the peer-to-peer sharing of content using at the beginning only texts. And then we were able to add images of any kind and videos and all this kind of stuff. And right now, if we think to the web is the main media in which we exchange content between peers. We create whatever kind of content and the distribution is quite clear, and nobody is really thinking to anything else but web and mobile to distribute content to your customers and to your peers. But the web was that way at the end of the 90s, and it's not exactly the one we are using right now. But still, at that moment, we were looking at creating value. I remember that when I joined Banca Mediolanum, it was 1999, and I was actually joining for creating the first website of Banca Mediolanum dedicated to our customers. So there is a complete similarity in what's going on the blockchain area if you exchange the concept of content with the concept of value. So the peer-to-peer exchange of value began with the easiest way of doing that, like the text for the web is the money for exchanging value. But already we are thinking to contracts. We are using contracts in various platforms. We are already thinking to token and tokenizing different kind of assets and exchange these assets in a blockchain using a digital representation of the external asset that we call token. But so at the end, in a while, all the businesses that are related to exchanging peer-to-peer value will go through some kind of blockchain. And this is now something that has been has more value than before, because there is a research indicated by Deutsche Bank, in which they were looking at the number of users of the internet since inception, since the first day one, and they compared with the number of wallets. That is actually a limitation of interpretation of a blockchain users, but it's something that you can enumerate quite easily, and you see there is a perfect alignment between the two curves. So that projection in the future, we will see that we will have the same structure of number of wallets arriving. Like we had with the number of customers with the use of the website, of mobile. So this is enforcing the concept that we have to focus on this technology in order to create value for our companies. So getting to Spunta, I have to highlight that normally in a blockchain, allegedly all the miner has an identical ledger. That is good from a certain point of view, but if I look from the perspective of a financial institution, the fact that another financial institution connected to me can see at least the amount, the volumes that we are doing, even if they're not able to understand exactly the kind of the kind of transaction that is inside the ledger, but only the fact that they can see the volumes is something that I don't like. So there is actually a solution to this problem. There are many platforms right now that are proposing a very similar structure to the blockchain usual transaction with a certain kind of segregation. There is the example of Corda. Corda is the R3 distribution, Corda Enterprise, and they actually create the ledger in a quite different way, in which if Alice and Bob are doing a transaction, both are signing the transaction with the keys, and the transaction is countersigned by a notary. This actually technically is a cluster of notaries. The good thing is that Alice and Bob, they had the transaction in their ledgers, but the other participant to the network, they don't see this transaction because they have no role in the transaction. So this kind of segregation is solve actually the problem of not using, not seeing the business done by others, and to have the possibility of actually implement systems in which there is this segregation very strong. And that is what have been used in the project of Spunta. Spunta has been created a couple of years ago, by the Italian Banking Association that created a table of goodwill people. They wanted to test the potentiality of the blockchain. And we chose one of the very typical process for banks, that is the reconciliation. And particularly for one typical kind of accounts that are the co-owned account between banks, in which only certain kind of defected transactions are written in the registry. And it was a very old-fashioned way of doing things. The procedure that was in place was dated in 1979. And we are completely rewriting it with the new technology, involving basically all the banks. So what we built is an infrastructure that is called Abilab chain, in which we connected all the banks, and all the banks are not using the blockchain to do what previously was done with very typical each bank owned procedure. So we substitute this procedure that was in place in each bank with a new card app that was doing almost the same thing, but actually with increased some of the functionality, because you know, studying the use case, is obvious that some new ideas are coming out. So now we have that in production. We already have the first two waves of the banks already active, and is the 85% of the bank population in Italy. The latest 15% will arrive with the third and last wave at September this year. I want to highlight some of the critical points of the project, because I would say that technically everything, considering the immaturity of the platform, is actually going quite smoothly. What was really complicated was to create an infrastructure to control it, to govern. So the governance model is the real complicated structure that we have to face in each blockchain project that we want to implement. There are a number of layers that are needed. The business network, the number of participants that are working together in a cooperative way. And you have to choose a governor. And in this case, we used the Italian Banking Association as a governor of the network. But then you have somebody that has to design all the use cases and implement it and write the code. And that is the level of business network designer. Then you have to have somebody that is going to answer to the call if anything is going wrong on a platform level. Because the complicated stuff here is that normally when 2 or 3 banks are working together, if one of the bank is down, the other 2 banks are working without any problem. But in the case of a blockchain or a distributed ledger in general, when one of the participants is down, or each transaction that are involved in that participant, even if issued by the other banks, is not going to commit. So it's complicated. And you have to have somebody that is quickly solving the technical problem related to, can be a network problem or whatever, a server that is down or whatever. So the business network governor has the responsibility to take care of the geographical impact of any malfunction that is going to have. And then you have who is actually providing really the infrastructure, the servers, the cloud. And in our solution, SIA has these 2 roles. Is the one that is answering if anything is going wrong, and the one that is giving the infrastructure of the connection, the network, the servers, and so on. The platform that we use is R3 Corda, and I have to say that at the moment is extremely good. 200 million transactions per year, and is working very smoothly. and with a very good performance. Another complexity that you have to face when you do projects of this kind is the architecture, the contract architecture. So who is dealing with who in terms of different responsibility and stuff like that. And this is the example of Spunta, in which all the participants actually are creating a sort of consortium, the Abilab chain, in which there is a board, which in this board there is one representative for each bank, and the board is basically deciding everything about the evolution of this infrastructure. Is the one that is choosing the new use cases, is the one that is choosing if you want to implement something new to extend the potentiality of this of everything. So this contract that is related to the Abilab chain is actually responsible also of maintaining the connection with who is taking care of the technical part from the designer's perspective, and handling the network from the response of malfunctions and servicing the different banks. But each bank can actually decide to have a different configuration of that. Can be a full configuration, a mid configuration. You can choose to have the server on premise or the server on cloud. So you have to have a specific contract in place for that component. So the contract and the different responsibility is quite complex. And I don't want to mention the fact that we did meetings with some 30 legal department of 30 different banks to get together with these contracts. So what we did is now that we build the railroads. We say the metaphor that we use is we built the railroads, and now on this railroad we had the first train. Spunta just represents the first train. We're discussing already future implementation of new trains, like the Spunta, the foreign Spunta, that is most probably the easiest that will arrive. The checks. We are discussing the KYC and anti-money laundering stuff. So many other possibilities to use this technology and this infrastructure and put in production new use cases very quickly. In terms of governance, I want to highlight that one of the key success points of this project was the fact that the regulator was basically sitting with us from day one. And there is something that is going on right now in the insurance area with the blockchain sandbox that we're building together with many participants that are banks, insurances, private companies, the different communes or regions of the governments and so on. So many are working right now. And the good point again is the fact that since day one, the regulator is side by side on the table. So the process is not to create something and then go into the regulator and ask permission to use it, but to stay side by side with the regulator since day one, and to understand with him what we have to amend to present regulations if we want to implement something that is new, that is brand new, that creates value in a different way. And we created with two committees. The lab committee is the one in which all the banks, all the insurances, all the companies are working together to create the use case, to implement the use case. And a scientific committee in which the regulator is present, receives all the inputs from the lab committee and understand what needs to change, just get understanding what's going on really and what we're going to realize. We get the feedback immediately about something that is critical and that should be amended immediately. And that is very productive because we are implementing since 3 years right now in a row, 3 different sandbox dedicated to insurances that are, creating the infrastructure in which we are going to produce new products and new services for our customers. So I would say that this is a key feature for success of this kind of project. So key takeaways. We need more years, a few more, for having a fully integrated, strong platform, fully useful for every kind of use case, generally, and a certain kind of adoption from the companies. But banks and insurance are really working very hard to create infrastructure because the DLT in general, it promises an increment of efficiency, and it's very interesting for this kind of industries. The most successful governance model requires the regulator to be involved since day one. That this is key for success. And the fact that we are keeping together different players working in a cooperative way. So the consortium model in which you distribute the costs between the different participants is the one that we normally prefer. Permission model are preferred right now because of the segregation capabilities, and the Italian banking sector is playing an incredible role. Sorry? And is playing an incredible role of early adopter and for the distributed ledger technology, and the insurance sector is arriving quite with a good speed. Okay.
Thank you very much. That was really interesting. We've had a few questions from our audience, but we only have 3 or 4 minutes, so I'm going to ask them very quickly. So, first question: when you think about blockchain and the implementation of this project, how did your approach to quality assurance and testing need to change? How did it need to evolve relative to what you might have done with a traditional project?
A very good question, thank you. I think the main attention should be placed on the fact that you have a geographical commit. Normally, when you think to your systems, you are taking care of your own infrastructure. So if you have malfunction of any kind, can be software or hardware or whatever, you're normally focused on the fact that you have a problem that is there in your organization and is affecting all your organization and the relationship that you have with the customer. But in a blockchain, this is not true. When you're not working properly, each transaction that is involving you on any role is basically blocked. So you're not blocking only you, but all the different participants that are doing business with you. And this requires a different approach in terms of understanding the complexity of the geographical commit that a distributed ledger or a decentralized ledger requires. And that put everything really in a challenging way. We are at the beginning. I have the final solution. What we did right now with the company that was helping us from a technical perspective is to learn. Basically learning the different components, where to put better stuff inside the software and the hardware to understand quite quickly if there are malfunctions of any kind.
So it strikes me on what you're saying, Demetrio, that a blockchain implementation, because one error, one defect brings down the whole system, inherently is suited to a DevOps approach and inherently can't live with a waterfall approach, a section by section approach. Is that fair?
Actually, what we did, it was a completely DevOps approach. We never had a waterfall approach on this project, and that is basically related to the fact that we were at the beginning of the beginning of a learning curve. Nobody was really completely tranquil of on anything at the beginning of the project, because 2 years ago, Corda was not available even in an enterprise level. We began with the open version. So if you discussing right now with the technical expert of this Spunta project is discussing with people with a lot of scares on the back, because they really understood so many things during these 2 years.
I'm very sorry to say that we've run out of time. We do have, I think, 3 further questions which we didn't get to, but I may take the liberty of sharing them with you offline and sharing them with our audience.
We'll answer directly to them. Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Demetrio, thank you so much, and great to see you.
Thank you very much, Justin. And thank you to everybody who's listening.